Welcome on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton on Texas Football. This episode brought to you by our friends over at mybookie.ag. That's mybookie.ag. 10 years in the business. Make sure you use code on Texas when visiting. Hey, Gerry, I'm looking at this list, and CJ and I went over the offense yesterday. The defense for the Longhorns has been, I would think, surprisingly good. A lot of people expected great things from this offense with Quinn Ewers returning for his third year. But the defense, it was a TBD, to be determined through 5 games as we give out these grades mid-year, basically. I got to say, I think the Longhorns are much better than anticipated.
Yeah, I would agree. I always preface this by saying they haven't really played a high-octane offense yet, but you can only grade against what's put in front of them, right? And I think they've been very well connected this year. I think the communication back end, starting backwards to front, back end, linebackers, defensive front, I think it's all been really sound this year. I think they've had great communication. I think everything's been tied together. And to me, that's almost where it all starts outside of just individual playmakers and game changers is how it's all tied together. And I think Texas has tied this together very well this year. And that's led to not as many coverage busts, right? You're always going to have a run fit. There are players on the other side of the ball too. They're going to make some plays, but you saw one bad run fit on a run against UTSA. Otherwise, UTSA had to work for every yard they got. Mississippi State had 290 yards, but they had to work for every yard they got. There wasn't a lot in that game they didn't have to truly earn. So I think that, to me, is what I've liked, what I've seen so far from the Texas defense. Again, with that caveat, they haven't faced a high-end quarterback. They haven't faced an NFL quarterback yet. They haven't faced a high-octane offense yet. And who will that be? I don't know. But they haven't faced that yet. So what's that's placed in front of them, I think they've been very, very, very good.
Okay. I think they have been too. I mean, they are limiting points. They are getting after the quarterback, even if they're not sacking him a lot. They're putting teams in 3rd and longs. They're getting off the field, except for Mississippi State, I think. Frankly, the big game on the schedule thus far has been Michigan, and the defense was lights out. They did not let Michigan get going in the middle part of that game and made them one-dimensional. And when you did that, that game was over. So my hat's off to them. We'll give a final grade for the defense overall later in the show. But first, let's start with defensive tackle and give a position-by-position grade, Gerry, if you don't mind. The defensive tackles were the much bemoaned, much critiqued group of this whole offseason on defense, right? Not only did Texas add 3 guys from the portal, we were asking whether or not Jeray Bledsoe would step up, whether or not Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins would be true seniors and show some leadership. Talking about a young guy like Sadir Mitchell a lot. Aaron Bryant was expected to contribute. Some of those things have happened. Some of them have not, right? And so I'm looking at the defensive tackle group, and there's no doubt in my mind that Vernon Broughton has been the bright spot among that group. Alfred Collins has been solid. Jermaine Lole right now looks like he's becoming the 3rd defensive tackle in that room. Even Alex January pushing up into that group as well. So what are your thoughts right now on this Texas defensive tackle group? Have they been tested either? Maybe they were against Michigan, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it was going to be by committee before the season, and it's by committee now. And that's not the takeaway from the guys starting or second team. It's just that it's a by committee group, right? There isn't the dominant guy, 2 guys up front that you game plan against, say, man, what are we going to do against these guys? It's by committee. You have to prepare for different guys when you play Texas this year. I think, look, Alfred Collins has probably faced more double teams than anybody else on the D-line this year, so that has to be taken into account. I think Vernon Broughton has been a playmaker this year. He's always been a disruptor. I think he's become a disruptor / playmaker this year. I think Jermaine Lole, if he stays healthy, he's just going to keep getting better and better. He's now getting more consistent time on the field. They have some versatility. You've seen Lole. You've seen all those guys line up at 5s this year. So I think they've performed well. Have they been tested? not tested from we have an offensive line, we have running backs, but we can also really throw the ball standpoint to where you have to go into a game knowing, okay, I've got to stop the run and rush the passer.
They haven't seen a complete offense.
No.
And that matters at defensive tackle because you can't just pin your ears back, and you can't just play the run.
Yep. So I'm going to give the group a solid B+ to A-. I think is where I'm going with that. And I'll say A- because you play it who's in front of you. And I think they've made plays, enough plays. I think they've shown enough versatility. Have they been stifling, just absolutely dominating? They weren't against Mississippi State. So I probably should go B+. I'm going to go B+ on that.
Yeah, I'm more in the B+ range as well. And it has very little to do with, say, Vernon Broughton, for example, right now graded the highest defensive tackle in the SEC with his season this year. That is no question in my mind, partially due to who they've played thus far. Now, it doesn't mean that also Vernon's not outperforming expectations. But I think it lends an idea to what you're talking about overall. My reasoning for this is I think they've shown some susceptibility to power run. Against Michigan, they even showed some susceptibility to it. They definitely did against Mississippi State. They are a by committee group, and they're plugging holes. The probably the biggest thing for me is not that both Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton came to play for their senior years. It's been the play of Jermaine Lole.
Yeah,
he has really added a third, what I would call true starter to that group. Now, Bill Norton has been solid. Alex January has been solid. Tia Savea, when he's had time, has been in there as well. And so I just don't know that they're clicking on all cylinders right now, or that they can necessarily, because they don't have the war daddy in there on the inside, and so B+ for me at defensive tackle. Defensive end is a different story.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Barron Sorrell is doing everything in his power to make sure he's an NFL player.
No doubt.
Senior is just doing everything really, really well. Then you look around and Trey Moore is starting and playing well, despite what people may, I expected more stats from him. Okay. He caused 2 penalties in a row, or caused 1 penalty and deflected a pass in consecutive in consecutive plays against Mississippi State on Saturday. He is affecting the game plan.
Yeah.
He is playing well. He is doing what he's being asked to do. Then you add guys like Ethan Burke, the emergence of Colin Simmons, even the emergence of Colton Vosick, who apparently has passed Justice Finkley on the depth chart at this point. I'm looking at it, Jerry, and Colin Simmons with 4 sacks. Colton Vosick with 2. Ethan Burke's got a touchdown return for a score. And Barron Sorrell may be the heartbeat of the defense.
Yeah, most consistent player.
Most consistent player on the defense. I'm giving the defensive end guys an A- to an A. They have given up some outside runs and given outside leverage, particularly Colin Simmons when he's going for the quarterback. But overall, I mean, look, from where this position was just 2 short years ago to where it went from a team weakness to a team strength in what seems like overnight. And
I'm going solid A for these guys because there's also affecting the passing game without getting the sacks. And I think Trey Moore and Barron Sorrell do that consistently as well. I think Ethan Burke does that with his wingspan, batted balls, just being in the quarterback's vision. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it other than sheer dominance of firing off a line and sacking a quarterback, which Colin Simmons gives you. So I go solid A. I think Barron Sorrell's maybe most consistent player on the team. Maybe DeAndre Moore is going to eventually reach up there and say, hey, me too. But maybe Jake Majors as well with that, but Kelvin Banks. But Barron Sorrell is just you just know you can count on him to do his job really well. And that makes it easier. Trey Moore does his job really well. Now, he wants more splash plays for his NFL career, needs that. But I just think we're in Vosick, kind of what he brings. I think this group, I mean, some of these guys are listed as linebackers now instead of edges. I mean, so they're changing the scheme. They're playing more Sam backer, right? They're showing versatility. But I just think this group has an A total because they're making splash plays, and whether that's Colin Simmons.
They're affecting the quarterback. No doubt.
Yeah, they're affecting the quarterback. They're affecting every offensive series in some form or fashion for Texas. And you got to go A with that group. And that's an A saying they can get better. Ethan Burke doesn't have a sack yet. Trey Moore doesn't have a sack yet. I mean, there's going to be a point in time where those guys hit the quarterback this year and affect that as well. So they're a solid A for me right now. If they really show up the next 2 games, we may need to move that to A+.
That's fair. All right. Before we get to the linebackers, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. Our sponsor is MyBookie. With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all, anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag and use promo code ONTEXAS to get started. That's mybookie.ag. Use promo code ONTEXAS to get started. It's MyBookie's 10th anniversary, and they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors. Bet big and bet confidently with risk-free Thursdays. That's today. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you'll get your money back. Weekly no-sweat win-win bets all season long. And sign up now using my ONTEXAS to the code to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet, but do not wait on it because it's only available for a limited time. For those of you who have been playing with MyBookie already, they've got something special for you too, a brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. And as you progress through the tiers, unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. Again, that's mybookie.ag. Thank you for your sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, Jerry, linebacker crew, we knew going in Anthony Hill was going to learn on the job, right? We knew that was the case. We knew David Benda had shown some signs of growing into the player he always could have become. I got to be honest, I didn't expect them to play this well this early, not as a unit together. I wonder if the helmet communication is a part of that. Now that Anthony Hill is the guy that's wearing that on game days. What are your thoughts of those two guys and what they've done? And then we'll talk about the other group behind them that have also acquitted themselves well.
Well, they have 59 combined tackles in 5 games. And Anthony Hill's obviously made splash plays. Ben's made some plays behind the line of scrimmage. I think they're playing a physical brand of football. Obviously, there's been a couple of run fit issues with both of them. The big play against UTSA, the long touchdown run. But have those guys progressed from last year to this year? Absolutely, they have. And so those two guys, I think, have been really solid for Texas. Now, have they faced somebody that can attack both of them in the passing game at the same time? No, not yet. And that will that come against anybody in the schedule? We'll see. I think Georgia may be the only one. Have they faced a true dual threat quarterback that can also throw the football and scares you? Not yet. We'll see what happens on the schedule. So I don't think they've been fully tested as well, but what's been put in front of them, I think they've been really solid. And the linebackers as a whole, your whole linebacker group, Bobby, has 90 tackles in 5 games. So Ty Anthony Smith, LaFau, whoever's in the game.
Mo Blackwell,
12 tackles. Whoever's in the game right now, they're making positive plays for Texas. And so I give this group a solid A- just because maybe you want to see them tested in the passing game a little more before you bump the grade up. But based on who they've played, who's been put in front of them, I think they performed at a high level.
I think back to last year, Jerry, and how they were beaten on the crossing routes by Houston mercilessly. I mean, literally almost cost Texas a football game against an inferior opponent. How OU ran the quarterback draw. I know nobody has really done that to them yet this year, but I think that Anthony Hill and David Benda are playing a smarter brand of football right now than maybe what we've seen from the linebacker group as a whole. And that's nothing to take away from Jalen Ford. It's just I think everybody is on the same page. Whereas last year it was Jalen Ford primarily being the guy, and then you would see maybe an Anthony Hill step up with a big play. Maybe David Benda's in the right spot or not. Now it's more of a collective whole that is creating the plays from the defensive side at linebacker. I'm fine with A-. I could also go B+ because I don't think they've been perfect. I don't think they're to the level. I think they're probably playing better than the defensive tackles overall, slightly, but I don't know. I have a hard time with this grade. I'm going to go B+. I do think that Mo Blackwell is serving his role in passing downs. LaFau is being a good backup right now to Anthony Hill as a downhill linebacker. And then I mentioned this. I mean, Ty Anthony Smith has a really bright career ahead of him in football. So I can see a B+ there for the Longhorns right now. All right, let's go to the defensive secondary. I want to separate these into two different pieces, if you don't mind, Jerry. Corners and nickel, and then put the safeties separately. Okay, so let's start corner and nickel. Jahdae Barron, Jalen Gilbo, and Manny Muhammad. Those are your three starters at those positions. Now, Gavin Holmes has seen a lot of time at corner as well. What do you think about those three guys? I think if you're asking one group to be maybe the most solid of any on the defensive side of the football, I think those three have.
Yeah, so I think on plays in front of them, I think it's an A+. I think it's an A+ group.
Yeah,
plays in front of them. I think that's an A+ group. They play the run well. They're physical at all those positions. I think they're sound on plays in front of them. I think Manny Muhammad obviously is the best coverage guy of all those guys. If you talk about what could people do if they have speed at multiple spots at wide receiver, I think the grade goes down for me because I do think you can get over the top of these guys.
Mississippi State did.
And exactly. And Georgia's going to see that and say, all right.
OU's going to try because even OU got on top of Auburn. That was one of their big plays of the game.
Yep. So Mississippi State got deep enough on Texas where I was like, okay. You kind of wondered what was going to happen if a team threw out multiple guys. And Sark gave you a hint of that in his Monday press conference, said these receivers are really good. That's him saying they're really fast is what he's saying. So that's something they haven't faced this year with multiple guys. Michigan didn't have it, obviously, and the P5s did not have it, or the G5s did not have it. So that's the question you have there is what happens if somebody throws out two or three guys that can really run and they have a quarterback that can get them the ball down the field. That grade may change a little bit. I go A+ on plays in front of them. I go A+ in communication of those guys playing on the same page. I go really high grade playing the run and physicality. I go high grade with ball skills when they're in position to make plays with the ball. Deep speed, I don't know yet. So that's going to take my grade to A- right now because they are so strong on plays in front of them. But kind of to be determined. I think Mississippi State's it's good that game happened for Texas because now nothing, Jaquez Petaway zipping by you is not going to be like a shock to your system. Georgia throwing out three guys who can really run isn't going to be a shock to your system. I think that was a good thing that happened in this secondary against Mississippi State. But for that reason, I also lower my grade a little bit. So I'm going to go A- as a whole.
I think I'll follow you because I do think that Jahdae Barron and Jalen Gilbo have been settling factors in the secondary, if that makes sense. The way maybe the best thing that we've seen this year on defense, or one of the best things outside of Colin Simmons being that guy, is how they were able to get Gilbo and Barron on the field simultaneously.
Yeah.
That's underrated overall as a whole in this defense right now, in my opinion, because both of those guys are heady players, good tacklers, and can cover, especially in front of them. So I like what they've done in the secondary, but I'll stay at A- with you. Safety is an interesting story, Jerry. They've been without Derek Williams now for a couple games because he's got a hamstring issue. Jelani McDonald has seen some time, but really it's been Andrew Makuba at this point and Michael Taft being the primary guys back there. And I think they've held their own
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, they haven't allowed anything deep on them. They've played the run reasonably well. Makuba has only missed a few tackles, and that was really against a Mississippi State running back that had two-way goes on him on Saturday. Look, Makuba was a huge pickup in the offseason.
No doubt.
Period. End of story. Because he gives you experience. He gives you a sure guy back there that you can rely on. You're not trying to bring somebody new in and along. And now, given Derek Williams' injury, it's a no-brainer that you needed him in the portal.
I was going to say, if you don't know how big of an addition Andrew Makuba's been, think about this team without him with Derek Williams out injured.
Right. Then you're playing Jelani McDonald every snap.
And he's been out injured. And he's been out injured.
Yeah.
And just how much of an upgrade that was over last year as well. And I think for him, the tackling the next two games is going to be huge for his NFL draft stock. But that in the rest of the season, that's a different conversation. But I think the communication's been tremendous with Makuba and Michael Taft. I think Jelani McDonald's versatility, that it shows you how far he's come, that they played him at nickel a lot against Michigan, even though he's a safety.
Yep.
Number one. Derek Williams, I think, Bobby, you brought this point up. I think Texas really missed him against Mississippi State. He is probably the best downhill physical guy at the safety position. And Jelani McDonald wasn't 100%. That's two of those guys that they missed against Mississippi State to kind of be fair to Mississippi State's rush yards output. And it took them a lot of carries to get there. But Derek Williams is Texas' best downhill safety. So they've been injured. Jordan Rebeldo looks like he's going to be a really good player. Phil Sami's been injured. I mean, this position's been injured as much as running back, just not season ending. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So I would give this group an A- because they've made big plays. A big underrated play is Michael Taft lets a guy get behind him in the red zone, but he still comes back to make a play on it, right? So before when the guy people are going to get behind you. I mean, it's part of the game. You got to give other people credit too. But he came back and made a play on that. I think there would have been times last year Texas didn't come back and make a play on that. So I think they've improved. I'm going to go A- at that position because it's a little incomplete for me because of Derek Williams and McDonald's injuries.
Yeah, I will go A- too. And I look, nobody's picked on the safeties yet. Now, maybe that's because Texas has a good pass rush, and it's harder to pick on safeties against a good pass rush, right? And we'll see. We'll see how that goes, but I'm good with that. Special team. All right, before we go to special teams, let's do defense overall.
Okay.
I think that makes the most sense here. The numbers are kind of staggering right now for Texas, frankly. But to your point, I agree with you. Who have they played?
Yeah.
Even the big non-conference game was against a offense that is antiquated at best. Now, they held that offense to 12 points. And that they didn't really score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. But at the same time, Jerry, you're sitting there looking at it, and you can only play who's in front of you. And I know I sound like a broken record there, but it's the truth. This defense, for all of its question marks that we still have because of who they played, they have dominated their opponents by and large. And that domination is not necessarily easy, and it certainly has not happened like that for Texas in past years. They are dominating some opponents now. That is the sign of growth overall on a defense. What does that mean for the rest of this season? I think we got to wait and see. But right now, I would absolutely give this defense an A to an A-. I think the sum of the parts has been better than the necessarily individual positions, which leans into what you talked about with communication, cohesiveness, understanding your role, playing as a unit. I'm excited about the path of the defense, not just this year, but for years to come. Also with the addition of Johnny Nansen to the group and to PK's list of tricks and of the trade, so to speak. I like the defense. I'm hesitant, like probably everybody else, to say that they're going to be able to be dominant all year long, though. And that's really the question. Where do you grade them right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, it's not a Georgia 2020, what a year about 21 defense when they
I
have
get it. Yeah.
first round picks on the D line could just totally suffocate you. That's not this level of defense. And they had what I think maybe all 11 players were NFL players. That's not this level of defense. I think they're really solid. I go A minus, and I was at an A, but then the only P4 team you've played in the SEC obviously had the best offensive game against you that anybody has this year. They actually controlled the clock. They did what they wanted to, and you didn't make them do what you wanted to. They did what they wanted to, and some of that was turnovers on offense and time of possession. But that's just a difference. You didn't suffocate them where Jeff Lebby was like, God, we can't do anything here. Just bring out the punter on third down. That's not what this defense is. But this defense is very good. And so I go A minus. Maybe that bumps back up to A after the next couple of weeks, but that's really on these guys' performance. But I think as a whole, and I think I would have gone B plus before the season. So I think they've outperformed where I thought they'd be right now. Okay. To give them credit.
All right. Look, special team. I'm fine with whatever we do on defense because really, I think what's ahead of them, is extraordinary. It will dictate whether or not this grade is too high or too low. I think overall for a team grade on defense right now, they've done more than what they were asked to do out of the gate. The question is, can they still keep that level of effectiveness or even 90% of that level of effectiveness up? Because if teams start averaging 17 to 21, that's okay. That really should be okay.
Yes.
If they start averaging 24 to 30 in conference, this defense will not be okay.
I wanted to add this. Yeah, I wanted to add this to what we're talking about because here's the one unknown, and we've talked about this on Coffee and Football this week. Here's the one unknown that remains to be seen. How much does Texas have in their bag defensively that they haven't had to bring out because of who they've played? They have not been challenged to push them to the limit yet. Now, I'm not saying they were totally bland against Michigan, but they still knew they were playing a team that didn't have speed at wide receiver and didn't have a quarterback who could get those guys the ball other than to the tight end. Their hand hasn't been forced. What do they have left to show everybody with this defense in the next few weeks now that they'll have to bring out everything? That may change the grade up a little bit too. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they can keep them in that. I'm hopeful that this defense effectively can keep SEC teams in that 17 to 24 range.
Yeah.
If it gets above that, that's where this defense teeters on not being effective for me. All right, let's go. Special teams. I really have to say almost incomplete on this because Burt Auburn's only tried 3 field goals, Jerry.
Yeah.
Very few kicks have even been returned. Our new punter, Michael Kern, has had 1 punt partially blocked, right? But even that, we haven't seen many returns against this unit. Maybe that is okay, though. Maybe that's really good to break even on special teams when your offense can be dominating and your defense is dominating. You don't need that. I still think Silas Bolden's going to break one at some point this year.
I agree.
But what are your thoughts on special teams overall?
Well, some Texas fans will give it an A+ because Burt Auburn hadn't been kicking field goals in the red zone, right? I mean, like, we don't see Burt Auburn anymore, so A+ for special teams. And that's not taken away from Burt, who's a tremendous kicker, but that just means Texas' red zone efficiency is way up this year. But it's incomplete for me. I think, look, they're directionally punting. You can tell by the way Michael Kern's dropping the football that it's more directional punting, it's not rugby style, but more Australian rules style in a way. They're kicking the more end over end directional punts. And is that because the gunners may not be quite what they were last year, where you could outkick your coverage and still say, okay, we got these 2 guys coming down there that we know are still going to be, they're the best in the country. I don't know if that exists this year. And some of that may be through injury as well, how that's kind of changed what Texas could do from that standpoint. But I'm going to go incomplete on that just because I think I want to see what happens in the return game and the punt coverage unit the rest of the way.
Matthew Gooden does not come close to breaking one either.
Right.
As a return guy with opportunities, even though he's looked effective.
I was looking at stats. How many has he even had to this point?
It had to be 4 or 5 at least, and he hasn't really come close to breaking one.
Right.
But he's been effective every time he runs. He bounces off people. He's a good returner.
Yeah.
In my opinion. All right. I want to say thanks one last time to MyBookie, our friends there at MyBookie. Deposit code on Texas. It's mybookie.ag. Double your first deposit, 100% match up to $1,000. Thanks again to them for sponsoring today's show. That's going to do it for our grades for defense. Overall, Jerry, between offense, defense, special teams, there's a reason Texas is 5-0.
Yes.
I mean, we are sitting here picking nits the whole way through. And I think that's indicative of where the Longhorns find themselves. We'll see if they can carry this through now to the second half of the season, the more crucial part of it, because look, everything remains on the table for the Longhorns for this football season. All right, for Gerry Hamilton,
Bobby, I know I went there yesterday, so I'll give my total offensive grade for the season A+ so far.
Got it. All right. That's going to do it for On Texas Football's defensive report here for this today. That is Gerry Hamilton, and I'm Bobby Burton. Thanks for watching. Hook 'em.